There we go. Another successful landing. This is not only a viewer requested video. I keep getting asked this in live stream for some odd reason. But also too, there's not a single video on YouTube about this topic, and it's a confusion. There's a lot of confusion out there, of course. Common confusion, for example, and this video is about rebirth versus transmigration. And specifically, we're talking about the common term reincarnation. Reincarnation is actually not taught in the Vedas. It's not taught by Adi Sankara or Sri Shankaracharya in his writings of the Upadisahasri, Devavachudamuni. It's not taught in any of the Nikayas, the Digha Nikaya, Majjhima, Samyutta Nikaya, and Anguttara Nikaya, Kudaku Nikaya, not in the oldest sections of the Sagata Vagapali, Uddana, Ibutaka, Dhammaparanapali, Suranapara, on and on and on. However, the conception exists that reincarnation is taught in those works. It's also a 99, and I'm literally the world's foremost expert on this particular word, that Buddhism teaches that there is no soul. Anatta means that there is no soul. And Buddhism is different than Hinduism, teaches there's no soul. There's absolutely no such doctrinal passage. I can literally say about this one thing, there's nobody on this earth that knows more about this topic than I do on anatta. I don't mean that egotistically, I mean it's a fact. I don't care if you think it's egotistical, it's... So all these misconceptions exist. Also to the notion of Hinduism. Hindu refers to a people. It's not a religion. It's not my opinion. That's actually a fact. You can actually find that in encyclopedias on religion and spirituality. I could give you 3 citations. I don't remember the exact citations off the top of my head. The essential citations are that there's no such thing as Hinduism. It's never prepared a body of canonical texts. The Vedas, the works of Sankara, the works of the Bhagavad Gita, there's Sanatana Dharma, Dvaita Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, on and on. There's all these different things that are lumped together and called Hinduism. There's no such thing as a religion of Hinduism. And yet, every American and Westerner thinks that there's a Hindu religion. And there's not. And the same is true about this thing that I'm about to... I was actually debating about providing like endless passages, proving this fact about the one and only transmigrant. In ancient Pali, which I've been translating now for like 23 or 24 years, the word is bhavanubhava or punabhavati, which means becoming and rebecoming, bhavanubhava, or punabhavati means the same thing, again becoming, puna, again becoming. So reincarnation is actually not taught, just as there's no such thing as a religion of Hinduism. Nor does Buddhism teach that there is no soul. There's no such passage whatsoever. Absolutely not. All that, by the way, came about because of Germans and English people in the 18th and 19th century that traveled to India, and they met up with those yellow-robed guys in Ceylon who are not believers in original Buddhism. They're actually followers of Abhidhamma, which is a latter-day sectarian creation. Just like Jesus didn't teach Catholicism and Protestantism, those are all latter-day sectarian religious dogmas with their own silly little belief systems. And has nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus, for example. Like Jesus didn't say, I'm a teacher, Catholicism is not original to Buddhism. Sorry about that. Catholicism is not original to Christianity, nor is Protestantism, just as those guys running around Southeast Asia with yellow robes. They're not original to Buddhism either. So anyway, getting onto the topic, I was actually debating on, droning off an enormous amount of citations. Plato teaches the same thing, so did Plotinus, so did the Neoplatonists. Here's a quote from Plato from Meno 81 81b through c. The soul of man is immortal and at one time comes to an end when it is called a dying away, and another is born again but never perishes, and having been born many times has acquired the knowledge of all and everything. Or this is a Plotinus' passage that goes something like, there really is nothing strange in the reduction of re-becoming, depending on how you want to translate that. Here's another one. We talk about liberation versus coming back again. You know, the one and only transmigrant. By the way, that's actually the title of an article that you could download from Dr. A.K. Kumaraswamy. It's also an article in his book, Metaphysics. His son, Rama P. Kumaraswamy, I was friends with, gave me the rights to all of his father's works. You could download his book, Metaphysics. It's all over the web. All over. Thanks to me, by the way. It's called The One and Only Transmigrant. It's in an article inside the book of Metaphysics. Metaphysics is the book written by Dr. A.K. Kumaraswamy. It's a collection of articles that he wrote. In the Vedas, speaking of transmigration, the one and only transmigrant, this distinguishes liberation from coming back again. I already gave that citation. I don't want to do too much stop here, like Prajapatis likewise quote the divine breath, who, whether or not transmigrating, sankara kamsare kamsa, neither injured nor distressed, as soon being served. I bore people with a lot of these passages. I apologize for that. I don't know if I wanted to give another passage or... A lot of people, including me, find reading passages from the Vedas incredibly boring and pointless. Buddhism is, by the way, a Neo-Saramanic movement, which is a condensation of Vedantic thought. You know, there's no such thing as Neoplatonism specifically. Neoplatonism is just a condensate of Pythagorean and Platonic monistic metaphysics, you know, boiling it down to its core essentials. Oh, yeah, somebody with the womies. Oh, yeah, Breath of Life. This is Bahuda Vijayati. The person expires and suspires in the womb. Expires and suspires. In other words, the persona or the existential person expires and suspires in the womb, either the womb of a woman or the womb of life. Born again when thou, O breath of life, is given. AV 10:4:14. Anyway, I don't want to go on too many of those passages. It bores people because the only thing they want to know is about the topic. I came up with a near-perfect analogy. There's not a finer one in this world, and it kind of illustrates things. Is that when people say, what happens when I die? Well, what happens to the signal when you smash the radio? What dies is not the self. Nobody dies. Life itself is the consubstantiality, of course, of matter and spirit. They are a consubstantial entity. A broadcast, by the way, and this is a very, very important point, and this is why my radio analogy, which I came up with, thank you so very much, and it's actually proven a near-perfect analogy. It illuminates things perfectly. A broadcast is not a signal. A broadcast is the consubstantiality of the signal in the radio. One example, I used to collect shortwave radios. I got a really neat, it's very awesome, realistic old radio. It's like a DX101, I think. I got like 10 of them. You could tune on all 10 of those radios at the same time. I've only done that once. The same signal, and it's actually a testing methodology to see which radios are better than others. All 10 of those radios will tune the same signal differently. Essentially the same, but differently. Because the broadcast is not the signal. Now we conventionally think that there's no distinction between the broadcast and the signal, but that's not true. A broadcast is interpolated and processed by the radio. And that's what consciousness is. That which we see as ourselves does not reincarnate. When people think reincarnation, like Bob, Sue, Larry, Joe, reincarnated, that's what Hinduism teaches, or Buddhism. And that's not true at all. The Vedas don't teach that. They give you hundreds of passages and bore the hell out of you. Or you could do the research yourself, or you could just read that. That's the perfect article. There are many books that, actually not many, many articles that actually accurately describe this, but nothing comes so close as the article by Dr. A.K. Kumaraswamy. He wrote many, countless books and thousands of articles in new 27 languages. That article called The One and Only Transmigrant by Kumaraswamy. I'm very proud to having known his son. I wish his son was still alive. His son was a cardiac surgeon here in America. Yet neither the Vedas nor Buddhism nor Advaita Vedanta speaks of reincarnation. It does not. The psychophysical entity that one sees in the mirror is consciousness. It is the broadcast. The psychophysical entity, i.e. the living person. But that is not the broadcast at all. The one and only transmigrant would be the aspirant, or the breath of life. And this, by the way, is the word Atman comes from, or the soul. The soul is the animating principle. In Pali, it's Chitta. In ancient Greek, the word is nous. There are many different names for it. It doesn't matter. There's 1,000 different names for counter space. It's counter space, subspace, ether, zero-point energy. Who cares? Human beings give 1,000 names to one thing only. But the personal entity does never, in any doctrine, bespoke of transmigrating, reincarnation, psychophysical reincarnation. It doesn't exist in doctrine. It's completely illogical from the premise of monistic monism and logical ontology of true metaphysics, such that the persona non grata, the psychophysical being that we know as Bob, Sue, or Larry, goes no further than that psychophysical entity, because it is a consubstantial construct of matter and spirit, just as the broadcast goes no further than the radio. When the radio falls away, the signal, where's the signal? It's like when people say, what happens when so-and-so dies? Or, what dies is not the self at all. If it was, then liberation would be completely impossible. Completely. 100% impossible. If you were that which passed away, then liberation would be pointless. That is just nothing other than superficial existentialism. A soul is a frequency, a modulation, and personal, but what is personal is embodiment. Since anything modulated can be tuned and hence captured, think of an unmodulated signal. Think of any radio on Earth that could tune an unmodulated signal. Just think about that just for a second. How could you tune something without modulation? This is the reason why the most important passages in ancient Pali are Suvimutta Chatasanabandham and Bhavanirodhanabandham. This literally means, if you reduce it down to what it is, that unmodulated spirit is liberation. Suvimutta Chatasanabandham. The thoroughly liberated, the Chitta or Nous means Nirvana. Bhavanirodhanabandham. The subjugation of becoming. Nirodha, subjugation, bhava, becoming. Nirvana is a subjugation and becoming. Literally it means the subjugation of modulation, to use our radio analogy. It is no longer tunable. The one and only transmigrant means that liberation does not be achieved, unactualized, such that it is still tunable by another radio. Let's say, human beings, of course, all look different, but they're all essentially the same meat sacks, right? We all know that, right? Doesn't matter if it's a short person, tall, fat, black, white, doesn't matter. They're all just critters, they're consubstantial constructs, waiting to be animated, waiting to capture a signal that is modulated, and if it is modulated, it is tunable. Liberation is an untunable signal. Don't take that analogy too far, but it is really damn close, and it is really damn good analogy. Think of a signal that is unmodulated. It's not a signal at all. You couldn't even call it a signal, because a signal is something that is modulated. I don't know how much you know about radio theory and radio physics, but you don't have to know much to know stuff about that. Reincarnation is meaning personal re-embodiment. In doctrine, is genetic only. In other words, you cloned yourself, or you have an offspring that sort of, it's called seminal reincarnation. That is taught in the Vedas. That is taught in Advaita Vedanta, is taught in Buddhism as well, original Buddhism. Buddhism is just a horrible name too, by the way. It's created in the 16th century, means nothing. The teacher Gautama, i.e. Sakyamuni, or the Scythian sage, he called his teachings Brahmayana. So instead of calling it Buddhism, let's call it what the original guy called it. He called it Brahmayana, which means path to the absolute. Path to the absolute means becoming an untunable signal. But an untunable signal is not a signal by definition, because a signal is tunable. This is the secret of polygenesis or punabhavati. Liberation is said in doctrine having broken the ridgepole. The ridgepole means breaking the condition of agnosis. Agnosis is objectification. Identity. Identity or objectification is modulation. If you are modulated, then you are once again tunable. There is not, and I repeat this is not my feeling or belief or personal theory or dogma. Reincarnation is absolutely 100% not taught in the Vedas, Advaita Vedanta, original, and I stress the word original. Buddhism, it is not taught. You know, just as there's no such thing as a religion of Hinduism, because Hindu refers to a people, not a religion. There's no such thing as a corpus or a doctrine of Hinduism. The Vedas are not Hinduism. Neither is the Bhagavad Gita. There's 1,000 different religions. There's actually more than that in India. There's no such thing as Hinduism. So this notion of like Buddhism teaches no soul, Hinduism, what's the other one? Reincarnation. These are all bombastic, superficial beliefs about things that are wholly untrue. I can tell you, after decades of research as a translator of Romanized Sanskrit and the original Prakrit texts of the five Nikayas, which are pre-sectarian, by the way. There's a wonderful word everybody should learn, pre-sectarian. You know, kind of like how Catholicism is not original to the teachings of Jesus, nor is Protestantism. None of that stuff is original. You know, all the dogma and the claptrap around it, you know, the fancy robes and the gold scepters and the burning, that's not original. That's just poop spackled on the outside of the house, layered over and layered over. It's buried. The original is buried. Some people actually have the brains to be interested in the original article. But yeah, the original Pali speaks of Punabhavati, like I said, means again becoming, the one and only transmigrant, which means the modulated signal, which is once again tunable. But reincarnation is not taught in the Vedas or the Gita. It's not taught in any of the five Nikayas. It's just not. The one and only transmigrant is taught. I recommend, if you want, you know, the 160 some passages, I believe, and it's only like a 14-page article. But it is extremely ripe with citations. The best article on the topic is called The One and Only Transmigrant by Dr. A.K. Kumaraswamy. It's out there on the internet. Just search for it. Trust me, you'll find it. Thanks to me. So what happens when you die? When what dies is personal. That is the broadcast. At the breakup of the radio, the broadcast is no more. The broadcast doesn't go any further than the life of the radio. Yes, that radio breaks down, the battery dies, you know, resistor pops, whatever. Kind of a really perfect, near perfect analogy with life. The broadcast is a consubstantiality of two things, the radio and the signal. As long as the signal is present and modulated, which is a signal by definition, then it is retunable by another radio. But that's not reincarnation. So I'm glad to be the first person on YouTube, at least, to make a video about this. I didn't want to bore the hell out of everybody. I got page after page here of citations from the Rig Veda, Samaveda, Athura Veda, and I think I just would have bored the hell out of everybody just reading. Even I get bored by the Vedas. The Vedas are really, really, really boring and not pithy at all. You know, there's pearls of wisdom in the Veda. It's kind of like a pearl in the bottom of a gigantic Olympic-sized swimming pool. You really got to dig a lot to find one succinct pearl. This is why the Vedas are pretty useless. I hate to say that, but they are. But I didn't want to bore everybody with enormous citations. Anyway, I hope you like this video. I hope it was pithy enough. I kind of cut myself midway through. It's like, I need to cut down on so many citations. Just get the core to the matter and address what it is people asked me about endlessly. So, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day.